to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 whiskey-fueled, liquid-fueled, liquid-lubricated show on the internet. This is the Whiskey Musings broadcast, and hey, guess what? I said whiskey. You're right. Okay, we're good. I'm a little discombobulated, and I'll tell you why. I have spent almost the entire day setting up for not only this broadcast, but also my later broadcast. That's right. Tonight is the inaugural transmission of the Whiskey Musings broadcast, TGRN edition, only on True Grit Radio Network, downloadable by an app. Find it in the App Store and the Google Play Store. You know, tonight I've got a good show for you. Then over there, because there are some specifics that I'm allowed to do over there that I can't do here. And I'll explain a little bit later on in the show. And then also I have a good show for you right here. I'm going to try. This is my first shot at trying to handle two shows, two fabulous shows at once. But hey, have you noticed something a little different about the picture? Yes, the picture. I have gotten a new camera. And why? Why? Because I wanted to bring myself to you in full HD. That's right. 1920 by 1080p with 60 frames per second. That's what I'm bringing to you tonight. I know, for those of you that don't geek out, that's probably doesn't mean jack crap to you, but it does to me. I'll tell you what, it takes this face that's made for radio and makes it even uglier because it's sharper and clearer. Now, the color looks a little bit off, little tiny bit off. I had to play with it a little bit. I'm going to have to play with it a little more. But the reality of it is that I am trying to up my game. I am moving into what I would consider bigger leagues. And so I am attempting to up my game, my broadcast game, not only here on the vodcast, but also my broadcast game later on the radio. So do me a favor. If you can, let me see, did I leave it up? No, I took it down. I'm sorry. But, please do me a favor. If you haven't checked out the True Grit Radio Network, of which I am going to full disclosure here, I am a partner. I am part owner in the organization and the company. Do me a favor, check it out. We cover blues, rock, roots rock. Boy, I can't even think of all the different genres, but most of them, they are true Americana. It's the roots radio. It's the roots rock, roots blues. It's the artists that are filling up the bars and the small venues that haven't quite made it. We're trying to push to get these things. Also, we have some great shows by some great people who have lived and been in the blues industry for quite some time. And yes, buddy, I see you over here on Rumble. I see you over there. Yes, I thought you looked a lot less blurry is what he says. He says, I look less blurry. Well, that would be because of my wonderful brand new camera. I'm so excited. I'm upping my game. I'm trying to get things going. So, hey, trying to make things more and more professional, let's say. So, before I get going too far, though, I do want to pay homage to my sponsor, of course. So let me go ahead and do that first. Let me make sure I pick the right one. I think it's this one. Yes, it is. All right. So tonight, if you value and honor our God-given right to self-defense by owning a firearm and would appreciate joining a community of like-minded individuals who welcome firearm owners of all experience levels, then you should consider joining the NCCA. The National Concealed Carry Association, NCCA, exists to serve the Second Amendment community by providing a nationwide network of Second Amendment advocates, offer elite self-defense and concealed carry training from the nation's top instructors, and provide rock-bottom prices on the best selection of gear and accessories. NCCA members enjoy shopping thousands of products with zero dealer markup, unlimited free shipping, and keep more money in their pockets with a zero credit card processing fees. The NCCA encourages safe, responsible concealed carry and celebrates those who are brave enough to protect not only themselves, but their families and their communities. If this sounds good to you, visit nationalconcealedcarryassociation.com to join today. As a special bonus, use my affiliate link, ncca.refr.cc/Rick, RICK02, to receive a code for 10% off any purchase at nationalconcealedcarryassociation.com. Once again, use my affiliate link, ncca.ref as in Frank r.cc/Rick02, and receive a code for 10% off your purchase at nationalconcealedcarryassociation.com. Visit National Concealed Carry Association, all lowercase, all one word, .com to find out more today. And I thank the NCCA for allowing me to be a brand ambassador. All right, so tonight we had a disturbing report come out earlier this week. And by disturbing, I mean this should scare the living bejesus out of every single American. Doesn't matter what side of the aisle that you are on. Because what this is setting us up for is a potential huge violation of civil liberties and setting up the government to start doing things that we thought, well, we were told they haven't been doing. Now, we all know that the government has been trying to push big tech into censoring and watching out for people who are on on shows like mine, and that they're trying to push these big tech places to take people off, like Joe Rogan, like Dan Bongino, like Mark Kay of the Patriots Network, and they're trying to do essentially what the Constitution limits them in doing. They're trying to push to control the narrative. And they've been able to do this by capturing the mainstream media. We know that already. I mean, it's fairly obvious when all of the left-wing media broadcasting happens to be continually, let's say, left-leaning. We also know that they do not report on stories just because it might shed an unfavorable light on someone who is related to the sitting president. For an example, the Hunter Biden laptop story, which was run right before the primaries, right before the election, and it was censored. It was literally taken off the internet by these big tech media companies. And it's that kind of information that I think that a lot of us, in terms of the American people, we should be privy to. And this is where places like Joe Rogan and places and shows like Dan Bongino and even Ben Shapiro with the Daily Wire, they're starting to gain a foothold in the marketplace outside of the mainstream media. And this is scary to the establishment. And the reason being is because they can no longer hold on to and control the narrative. They can no longer hold on to and control what people see and what people think. Now, this is very 1984-ish. I mean, everything is trying to be controlled from the top down, and that is definitely not where the American thought process came from. I mean, in the First Amendment, it talks about the freedom of speech. It talks about the fact that the freedom of the press is there. And so, I'm just sitting here and I'm telling you straight out that this memo that I'm about to reveal to you is enough to seriously scare the living bejesus out of you. And again, I don't even care what side of the aisle you're on. If you have any kind of sense of American values, any kind of sense of the American purpose, in terms of freedom and liberty, this is going to just knock your socks off. But before I get into that, I've got to pay tribute, of course, and read out of our American Patriots Almanac. See, you see that? So that's the camera. Okay, that shininess, that's the camera. I'm trying to work on that. I apologize. But the American Patriots Almanac is where I go to get a lot of my information on a daily basis. So I see the chat over on Rumble is going off like crazy. Hello there. Let's see. Broke Assured Neck, I think that's what it is. Anyway, I appreciate you stopping by and joining Buddy in the chat. I know the two of you are, or sorry, Broke Ass Redneck. There we go. Broke Ass Redneck. Okay. Hey, Broke Ass Redneck, you said you're in Washington? Really? What part? Anyway, I'll come back to that. But first, so for everybody else that's out there, let me go ahead. The American Patriots Almanac, and of course, this is On This Day in American History. All right, so on this day in American history, as I get my spectacles on so I can read this small print, February 12th is the birthday of Abraham Lincoln, born in 1809 in a log cabin near Hodgenville, Kentucky. Long before he became president, Lincoln's friends and acquaintances called him Honest Abe. When he was a boy in Indiana, he borrowed a book about George Washington from neighbor Josiah Crawford. After rainwater ruined it, he went to Crawford, owned up to what had happened, and spent 3 days in Crawford's cornfield working to pay for the book. When Lincoln was a young storekeeper in New Salem, Illinois, he accidentally shortchanged a customer by 6 1/4 cents. As soon as he discovered the error, he closed the shop and walked 6 miles to pay the money back. Lincoln's store was not a success. He and his partner William Berry went into debt trying to make a go of it. The store winked out anyway, as Lincoln put it, and left him owing a great deal of money, especially after Berry died. He could have done what so many others in similar situations did, simply head west for new frontiers and leave the debt behind. But he resolved to stay. For a young man of his means, it was a large burden. He called it, with a grim humor, his national debt. It took him several years, but he paid it all back. His reputation as a lawyer caused people to say, he'll be fair and square. One time he forced a law partner to give back half the fee the man had charged a client. That money comes out of the pocket of a poor, demented girl, he said. I would rather starve than swindle her. It is no coincidence that one of our most beloved presidents was a man who held himself to the highest standards of truthfulness. If only people today could be as honest Abe. My goodness. If only. You know, our world would be a much better place if we had a stand-up set of people like our founding fathers. But you know what? Tonight I'm going to be the bearer of somewhat bad news. I mean, our government is acting like a bad actor. And to be honest, I mean, considering the people that are in charge, especially the president, the sitting president of the United States, in all the times that he's been caught plagiarizing, lying, distorting the truth, whatever kind of phrases that you want to put out there, I'm actually really surprised I'm not surprised of what's going on. Now, if you recall, back right before this past September 11th, you'll note that we saw this as a warning. Let me see. Yep. So this was a warning that was placed out by our Department of Homeland Security at the time, who was reviewing terror threats. And this came out, honestly, this came out after or right before this last September 11th. Now, if you take a look at this, you see the potential terror threats that were listed here. We have opposition to COVID measures. We have claims of election fraud and belief that Trump can be reinstated. We have the 9/11 anniversary and religious holidays. And these are things that the Department of Homeland Security back then deemed as a problem for our country and for the people who are in it. Now, you know, if you look at that, I mean, first of all, I haven't been hiding what I've done. I mean, I'm essentially a terrorist threat according to this, because I've been in opposition to several of the COVID measures that have been out there. I've had claims of election fraud. I've seen the papers. I've read it. Do I believe Trump can be reinstated? Well, actually, I know the Constitution a little bit better than most, and so I say no, he can't. Unfortunately, you know, I celebrate, or I should say, unfortunately, that is the case. We don't really have a clear path to clean that up. But outside of that, 9/11 anniversary, I celebrate that every year because that was one of the most horrific attacks on our democracy today. It is not the January 6th, quote, insurrection, unquote, the BS crap that they're throwing out there. Religious holidays, sure. Christmas, Easter. Yeah, those are religious holidays. I celebrate those. Those are all things that are woven as a part of American culture. And it's this kind of stuff, this kind of talk that really gets you your goat. I mean, it really causes a problem for all people. I mean, realistically, it should be, this kind of thing really should make anybody who is a person who believes in America and believes in freedom and liberty, kind of scared, to be completely honest with you. And so, you know, I don't even know where this comes from, but I can tell you this much. So February 7th at 2, it looks like it was issued at 2 p.m. Eastern time. There was a bulletin that came out from the National Terrorism Advisory System. And so let me go ahead and bring that up here. And let's take a look at that real quick. So you have this bulletin here. And this is the DHS once again pushing this out. Let me see if I can kind of zoom it in just a little bit. Let's see. We are there. Let's make this bigger. And okay. Sorry, this is taking just a second. Let's see. Okay. So this should be able to be read a little bit better. But so we have the summary of the terrorism threat to the United States. And this is a bulletin, again, issued by the National Terrorism Advisory System. And this is based under the DHS. And let's read what this summary says. The United States remains the heightened threat environment fueled by several factors, including an online environment filled with false or misleading narratives and conspiracy theories and other forms of mis, dis, and malinformation. They call that MDM. Introduced and or amplified by foreign and domestic threat actors. These actors seek to exacerbate societal friction, to sow discord, and undermine the public trust in government institutions to encourage unrest, which could potentially inspire acts of violence. Okay, so they're basically saying, I mean, just in that first sentence, if you think about it, and I'll leave it up here so you guys can, you can read it if you're on the Rumble side, but they're basically saying that anybody who puts out what is considered misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation as a potential threat, who could be attempting, the same people could be attempting to push for violence. Now, to be 100% clear, on this show, there's no reason for political violence in any way, shape, or form. Okay? Political violence, just to have political violence, is completely wrong. And you know, the whole thing that happened with all of the BLM riots and everything else, all of that stuff, absolutely, that is abhorrent. Any kind of attack, physical attack that may have happened on January 6th to the police who are trying to quote unquote defend the Capitol. Absolutely, that is wrong. That is completely wrong. You shouldn't even think about doing any of that stuff. But let's move on just a little bit here, because what they are talking about even further down is the quote proliferation of false. This is under number 1 here. The proliferation of false or misleading narratives which can sow discord and undermine public trust in U.S. government institutions. I've got it highlighted in orange here. Now, proliferation of false or misleading narratives which sow discord or undermine public trust in U.S. government institutions. You know, the last time I looked, the U.S. government's doing that quite well on their own. That they have talked about things like, you know, masks work, then they don't work. Then, you know, if you get your shot in terms of the COVID shot, I can't even call it a vaccine anymore, but that if you go get your COVID shot, you're protected. But yet, if you get your COVID shot later on, you had it turned over to where now you not only can get it, but you can also still die from it in terms of COVID, just that it minimizes your chances of going to the hospital and dying. So, you know, is the government going to start censoring themselves based off of this bulletin? Because again, they're the ones that are sowing discord. They're undermining the public trust in the U.S. government institutions. Every time they open their freaking mouth, they go ahead and say something that doesn't make sense. Okay? They won't even talk about some things in terms of the government. So now here's number 2 in this. Number 2 is continued call for violence directed at U.S. critical infrastructure, soft targets, and mass gatherings, faith-based institutions such as churches, synagogues, mosques, institutions of higher education, racial and religious minorities, government facilities and personnel, including law enforcement and the military, the media, and perceived ideological opponents. So that's point number 2. Now look, you shouldn't even, whether you agree with the government or not, it is absolutely wrong to try and go and do violence. I mean, the whole purpose of this situation is that we need to peacefully protest, as Donald Trump said on January 6th. We need to peacefully assemble. As Chris Cuomo, formerly of CNN, didn't know where it was written that protests have to be peaceful. What an idiot. The point here is that we really shouldn't be trying to target anybody. We shouldn't be trying to target stuff. I mean, right now, we have probably the biggest freedom rally going on up in Ottawa, Canada, by a group of individuals, the truckers up in Canada, who are trying to get rid of these vaccine mandates, these mask mandates that the Canadian government itself has put on them, which is going to cause all kinds of problems and issues. I'm hearing, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm hearing that there is going to be a U.S. equivalent of this. And just about every bad actor has been trying to shut this thing down. They've gone after GoFundMe. GoFundMe has held back its donations, shut the donation stream down, and they went ahead and were talking about distributing the money to places other than what people, were going to use it for. And it wasn't until there was pushback from the people involved to, get their money back. It wasn't until that pushback became quite big that GoFundMe finally relented and said, okay, fine, we're just going to issue everybody refunds. And even now, this is a bit of a problem. I mean, it's a big enough problem that Governor Ron DeSantis, the America super governor of Florida, I swear, that guy, he should be freaking president of the United States. And I'm hoping that he runs when he's ready. I really hope he does. Because like I've said on multiple occasions, I would follow that man into battle. But he is actually going to investigate he's going to investigate the people who have handed over money to GoFundMe and investigate GoFundMe into a fraudulent claim or a fraudulent situation as to what they're trying to do with even just giving the refunds. Now, the trucker convoy moved their donation effort from GoFundMe over to, I think it's Give Save Go, which is a Christian-based organization very similar to GoFundMe. And Give Save Go apparently had a Ottawa court order, or a Canadian court, say, no, you guys have to stop that. You can't do that. And they were going to freeze the funds. I mean, this is a concentrated effort. This is a concentrated effort by a couple of different governments to essentially shut down what would be free speech, what would be freedom and liberty, and being able to do what it is that we need to do, we as a people need to do in order to go after the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. So let's go back to the summary of the terrorism threat. Item number 3 they have listed here is calls by terrorist organizations for attacks on the United States based on recent events. Now, you know, the sheer fact that they're even talking about dis, and malinformation. I got to be honest with you, I didn't really know what malinformation was. My next screen that I'll show you here in just a minute, it essentially kind of helps to define that. But the reality of it is that, you know, this is the government of the United States that is essentially saying that anyone who questions the government, questions what's going on within the government system, and questions their government, which, by the way, here in the U.S., constitutionally, we have a right to do so. We have a right in the First Amendment to talk to our government for a redress of grievances. And I mean, honestly, this is crazy. This is nuts. For our DHS to be going after what essentially is anybody who is questioning what is going on in our government today is absolutely nuts. Now, you'll notice that in that bulletin, when I showed it on the screen, you'll notice that they had a link in there to talk about dis, and malinformation. Now, I know what misinformation is. I know what disinformation is. But malinformation, what the hell is malinformation? And I'm sorry for my word, but seriously, what is malinformation? Well, that link actually went and showed us what malinformation is. So let me go ahead and bring that up here. This is from the CISA, and that's the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. It's kind of interesting they use the word security twice, but according to them, their definition of dis, and malinformation comes to this. The CISA's dis, and malinformation MDM team is charged with building national resilience to dis, and malinformation and foreign influence activities. Through these efforts, CISA helps the American people understand the scope and scale of MDM activities targeting elections and critical infrastructure, and enables them to take actions to mitigate associated risks. The MDM team was formerly known as the Countering Foreign Influence Task Force. Wow, that's a mouthful. Let me say that again. Countering Foreign Influence Task Force. Okay? Now, the announcement, which came out on January 31st of 2022, released a set of 4 election security training videos to enhance awareness and the importance of securing the nation's election infrastructure. Okay, well, first of all on that, I'm going to stop reading this. I'm just going to tell you, there's a couple ways that they can secure our elections, and they won't do it. Point number 1, voter ID. If you go to vote, you have to prove you are who you say you are and that you're an American citizen. Because as I've pointed out in past shows, just about everything that we talk about in terms of voting or in terms of defending our rights or in terms of the Constitution itself even the state constitutions that talk about voting, they all say the same thing. They all boil down to, you must be a citizen in order to gain all of these rights and also the responsibilities of those rights. So that would be number one, voter ID. I mean, I'm sorry, but I can't see why, especially in today's day and age, you have to have an identification in order to go to the doctor's office and get a shot or get serviced or any other kind of thing. If you turn in like a insurance card for medical insurance, it has to be accompanied by your ID, your identification. You have to prove who you are. So why won't they do this for voter ID? Well, pretty plain and simple. They're not interested in securing our voting rights as Americans. But if you go away from just the factor of putting in an ID, how about voting in person? Let's get rid of all of this mail-in voting. Mail-in voting has been shown to be probably the easiest vector for any kind of fraud to happen. Okay? Now, let's check out the rest of this. Okay? So the training videos, and this goes back to the announcement on the 31st of this year, the training videos provide an overview of the CISA's role in election security, the importance of building public trust through secure practices, and risks associated with ransomware and resources to mitigate them, and the risks associated with phishing and resources to combat them. Okay, so if they're so interested in election integrity and securing elections and making sure that information that is being put out there is correct, okay, then why are they not going after Facebook, or I should say Meta now, for not running the Hunter Biden laptop story? In fact, quashing it, because that was essentially a methodology by which to influence the elections. And was it domestic influence or foreign influence? We don't know. I mean, back in 2016, they were talking about foreign influence in the way of Russia trying to influence the election, for Donald Trump and against Hillary Clinton. But the funny thing about it was all of that came from a dossier that has since been debunked. So once again, all of this stuff that's coming out that is being debunked, being proven wrong, being shown to be falsehoods, and yet nobody on that side of the aisle is getting any sort of attack or any sort. I don't see people going away and going into jumpsuits and walking away in these uniforms. These people are crazy. They're sitting here talking about malinformation, misinformation, disinformation, but yet all of that stuff is right there in front of them. I mean, CNN, MSNBC, you can pick any mainstream media outlet just about. Even Fox News has been shown to have some falsehoods in there. And yet the government is pointing the finger at people who go to alternative sources of information and truth as being the people who are the potential terrorists. So if that's the case, this show right here, this show is a potential terrorism target. Okay, I'm not, but again, I am telling you right now, I do not condone any kind of political violence. That's completely wrong. But according to the definitions, this show could fit into it because supposedly I'm spreading potentially mal, and disinformation. Speaking about that mal, and disinformation, you got to ask the question. They define it, but they never actually tell you who decides what is misinformation, what is malinformation, and what is disinformation. Is this a kind of a backhanded way to say that anybody who is not the government is spreading out this misinformation? I mean, Joe Rogan had a very credible doctor who has reportedly been a part of the mRNA vaccine development. He was on his show And what happens? They get calls to pull him off of Spotify. Now, thankfully, Spotify is, holding their own right now. And realistically, I mean, just the mere talk about that and trying to, the outrage that's out there about that, honestly has blown Joe Rogan up. I can tell you that when YouTube canceled Dan Bongino, that just increased his numbers. I mean, on Rumble, he went from 2 million to almost 3 million subscribers on Rumble just by itself. And I know that his YouTube channel had like maybe, I don't know, 800,000, I think was the count at one point. But the reality of this is that even though they're sitting and talking about all this misinformation, malinformation, disinformation, they're essentially setting us up for another, in a way, sort of a Patriot Act kind of thing. Now, the Patriot Act, for those of you that don't know, came after 9/11. And it actually allowed the government to do several different things that it hadn't been doing prior to 9/11. The idea, of course, was to increase our security. And you'll know that, I mean, even now, you'll know if you go to the airport, you're going through security checkpoints. It was the development of the TSA. It was money being spent on enforcing cockpit doors and a whole bunch of other whole host of other things that are going on behind the scenes. But at the same time, even though all of that stuff sounds really good, it's also making more of an invasion of our privacy and our civil liberties. I mean, and I'll be honest with you, I've been an advocate to where I've always said, planes are not really public transportation. They never have been. They're owned by private companies. They're not run by the government, so you can't necessarily put them into public transportation. So, be that as it may, if a airline decides that they want to screen their people, and screen the people coming to take on their services, or as in multiple cases have happened where somebody's wearing a shirt that has some offensive, picture or some kind of remark on it, and they get kicked off the plane, the commonality is for everybody to be like, well, you can't do that because that's public transportation. They're not allowed to do that. They can't censor stuff like that. Well, there's only one problem with that. They are not public transportation. They never have been. They're privately held companies. And so, honestly, I find that the line being blurred between public and private is now starting to get even farther and farther blurred. It's starting to get more obscured. And I even talked about this in terms of the privacy fallacy. I mean, at this point, day and age, I'm putting this out on the internet. I'm putting all of this out on the internet. And once it's out on the internet, it stays forever. Okay? It's out there. You can look, you can find. We got on board with social media. It started off with things like MySpace and then turned into Facebook and Twitter came on. And everybody, if you look at what people post, you're like, oh my God, I mean, what the hell? You're posting about like your meal in this morning. Like they take a photo, they go, look at what I ate today. Okay. Why? I mean, that would be considered private information. And then you also have TikTok. TikTok is actually kind of fun. If you go and watch, I mean, I'm sorry, but some of the women that are on TikTok, they are doing things specifically to get attention. And then they get pissed off when they actually get that attention. So, we sort of did this to ourselves in terms of the line, blurring the line between public and private. And we did this to ourselves. So, sooner or later, we're going to have to make the decision in terms of things like social networking and big tech or actual privacy. What happens within one's home is on their own. I mean, even right now, there's been stories about things like Alexa, for an example, or the Google Assistant, being able to listen in on people's conversations. Now, the reason why the company is doing it, and they clearly state this in their use authorization forms, has to deal with the fact that they're trying to improve the the algorithms that are used in order to identify certain words that somebody is speaking and to be able to improve those algorithms and make them more accurate. But in reality, that's kind of a bit of privacy problems. And I see things like this terrorist memo basically saying that now anyone who puts out any information that essentially the government deems as misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation has now become a target to start being looked at, to start being watched. And the old adage back in the day was that all of our transmissions were being, monitored by the NSA. And for a long time, Americans sat and they thought, you know what? That's a farce. That's false. I mean, we've got the Constitution to protect us. And then Edward Snowden happened. And all of a sudden, what we thought was a fallacy started to become real. And now all of a sudden, conspiracy theorists are turning into truth theorists. And what's even worse is now the government is trying to shut up the outlets and knock down the outlets where these people who are putting out the truth are starting to put things into the public sphere. This is scary. This is dangerous. For our government to sit here and talk about anybody who essentially does misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation and that they can be considered a terrorist. This should scare the living daylights out of you. It does me. And the one thing about freedom of speech actually is that if you have freedom of speech, if you actually truly have freedom of speech, not freedom to like the speech that is out there, but the fact that somebody has the ability to be able to speak their mind, whether you agree with it or not, that's the true value of the freedom of speech. That's the true value of American freedom. I don't have to like what people say. I don't have to like the way they live. I certainly don't have to like the way they dress or the way they act or any of that other stuff. But I can tell you as an American, I will damn sure stand up and defend their right to act and to look and to speak, as long as it isn't something that would be considered hateful or that damages or infringes upon somebody else's freedoms and liberty. And that ultimately is where we are about our country. That's where we're at right here today. We need to start standing up and saying, we've had enough. We don't agree with what you're saying, but we've had enough of you trying to censor us just because you don't like what we are saying. All right. Wow. I got to tell you, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I am floored right now. I am so happy and proud of the fact of all the people that have come over. I'm looking at Rumble. Rumble's going absolutely nuts in terms of the conversations. This is just amazing. And I've probably missed a whole bunch because, of course, I'm sitting here talking about it. But the point is that thank you. Thank you for taking some time and coming over here. Now, Tonight I have the special honor to go to another show. And it actually starts at 10 p.m. Pacific time, which would be 1 a.m. on the East Coast and midnight in Central Time. Now, the station that I'm transmitting for is, full disclosure, I'm part owner. I am a partner in it. I have helped the founder to make it. And so, given that, the slot that I have, that time period, we're using as a development area. You've heard it. I mean, I've said it a few times already. It's True Grit Radio Network, TGRN. And our whole purpose over there is to essentially talk about or bring to the table doing things that the establishment in radio world no longer does. And You know, if you look at some of the things that the radio does, and first of all, get this, it's not bad. None of what the radio does is bad. But we felt that there was an underserved market. And the underserved market happens to be those that like more than just one genre of music. I mean, if you go and you listen to, country, you go to your country station if you happen to have one in town. And that's all you hear for the most part is country. Okay, or you want to listen to blues, you hear blues music. We at TGRN thought that it would be a great opportunity to break the barriers, break the boundaries of traditional radio. And that is to create a station that kind of blends a lot of different things. And now, from my perspective, okay, I have an opportunity to bring the Whiskey Musings broadcast into a different environment. And the advantage that I have by doing this show, is the fact that I can actually play music without having to worry about copyright strikes. And the reason being is because of the fact that, we're actually paying the licensing on that side of the house. But it doesn't mean that I can't talk at the same time. And so what I think, if you join me tonight or any other night, if you join me over there, my intent is to sort of weave a story in with music and information. So I'm kind of hoping that you'll come by and understand it is a development project. So this is something that I'm kind of developing and I will be learning on my own as we go through this. So I would appreciate it if you join, if you can. If you can't, it's no big deal. I understand it's very late. Believe me, I'm going to be kind of wondering about the time and everything when I get there. But the thing about it is that we wanted to bring an underserved market, and it's called True Grit Radio Network. We have an app on the Google Play Store. We have an app on the App Store. But you can also listen through Live 365. If you already have the Live 365 application on your phone, you can also go and use that app. You can just search up the station, True Grit Radio Network. And we're attempting to bring to light some of those artists who haven't quite made it to the next level, who haven't quite gotten the cushy record contracts and things like that. The reason being is because, oftentimes when somebody starts doing something on a large scale like that, their music tends to change. And so we wanted to focus on the independent radio artists, the independent artists who are doing the music for the love of the music. And that ultimately, I think, is the underserved market that we're trying to attach to. So you may be listening to True Grit Radio Network today and then listen to standard radio tomorrow and hear a artist or a group on True Grit Radio that all of a sudden gets a big contract and goes majorly public, and you can look and you can say, hey, I knew that person before, when, etc. And that's really cool. I like that. I like that thought. I like that idea. But we're also being renegades in the fact that we're actually blending 3 or 4 different genres, and we're allowing different people who are doing different things. And whether you like it or not, it doesn't make a difference. But the point is that these artists are stepping outside of their comfort zones. They are learning about things. They are trying new sounds. They're trying different things. Things like putting rap to country music. Now, that's not everybody's forte, and I understand that. And I got to tell you, I'll be honest with you, me personally, I'm not a big fan of the entire genre itself. But there are select songs and select artists who created those songs that I actually like. And as far as Mr. Redneck out here asking me if Buddy Brown is on there, I have been looking at Buddy Brown. I'm looking to maybe add him as an artist. So he will probably be making some debuts and things like that on the True Grit Radio Network. But it's artists like him that are in there. Now, being the patriotic person that I am, of course, I am going to focus. I'm going to try and focus on things like American values and that kind of stuff. So, again, do me a favor, come and stop by, kick off your shoes, grab a drink. I mean, shoot, at that late at night, everybody's going to be there. You know, everybody's off for the most part, unless of course you work overnight like that. But yeah, we're gonna be taking a look at people just like him, like Buddy Brown. Well, you know, I'm a big guy into Mickey LaMantia and Creed Fisher, and I'm trying to think of some other ones. You know, Brantley Gilbert I know has had some good stuff out, but there's several other smaller, what I would consider smaller time, are the ones that I'm not hearing on like the big radio stations that you hear. And it's those kinds of people that we want to focus on. And so that's what we're looking to do. But I'd appreciate it if you'd stop by. And I normally do this at the beginning of the show, but I'm going to go ahead and do it now anyway. Thank you, everyone who has subscribed. I am at 80 subscribers the last time I checked earlier today on Rumble. I'm still kind of hanging at 52 on YouTube, but I'll be honest with you, YouTubers, I really think you're underserving yourself over there. I think you should come over to Rumble. Come on over to Rumble. Come on over to the free speech platform, the video platform Rumble. Come over there. But I appreciate all of the work that a certain someone, and I won't say who, but a certain someone has put into promoting my channel. And it looks like I'm at 81 right now. So thank you, Shannon, for updating me. But I appreciate everybody taking their time and coming here and listening to what I have to say. Because believe it or not, I actually do have a lot to say. That was the whole purpose of me starting this thing a little over a year and a half ago. And I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep doing it, and I'm going to keep pushing. And I'll see you all on the radio station later on tonight. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my final Whiskey Musings thought of the evening. Again, thank you for subscribing, and we'll see you next time on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night, everybody.